by Malcolm Moore and Ryan Lewis. They're both great acts, and they presented a beautiful vision: love, multiculturalism, interracial harmony, marriage, gay and straight, righteous demands for equality. And I even think I saw an Asian guy in the chorus. So the Asians now have rhythm. Only the world is a lot more complicated than that. Still, their song had an incredibly positive impact on our culture this past year. Same Love may have even been a coming out party for the LGBT equality in mass culture. But it was hardly the first time sexuality has been influenced by the way we live. Instead, it was the moment when mainstreaming of gay culture became unstoppable. The mainstreaming of minority cultures is hardly new. Our society has been steadily moving from oppression to appropriation since the dawn of the beginning of the civil rights movement. A month ago was the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act in the United States. I don't think we need to remind ourselves of the profound influence Black culture has had on American life and the world. Given our greatest social justice and civil rights leaders, Malcolm X and MLK, produced some of our finest literature, Maya Angelou, may she rest in peace, given us an amazing business leader, Ursula Burns from Xerox. African Americans have defined contemporary culture globally, Jay-Z. Utterly dominated sports, Michael Jordan. And once you become an icon, I think you've made it. David Ogilvy once said that advertising reflects the mores of society, but it doesn't influence them. Judging by that standard, America has an awfully bigoted place. Just a few decades ago, we've had our challenges with racist ads and practices in our industry. But eventually, Madison Avenue, as it's often called, advertisers figure out that non-whites were people too. Or rather, I should say, they figured out that they were consumers too. What I'm gonna share with you is one of the first African-American ads that was ever made in the 1940s. And I'll let you be the judge in terms of how far we've come today.
Day, my friend, take time to relax with good fun, good food and friends.
Oh, sorry, gosh.
Have some ice cold jacks. Life is like the scale, you know, daily do re mi. Pucker up your lips and blow whistle merrily. You whistle, it's the fact, license soon around. Whistle every day and say, Jack, there's beer in town.
As you can see, that was very early in the 1950s, and here in Columbia today, we're talking about equality and inclusion from an advertising perspective. I just want to give you some examples of where we were in the US in the 1950s, and I'll walk you through as to where we are today and the differences as it relates to multicultural and cross-cultural. Here's an example of one of the first US Hispanics advertising.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way, and when they're flecked with brown and have a golden hue, bananas taste the best and are the best for you. You can put them in a salad. Green? No, not yet, my dear. That greenish way you're looking means that you are ripe for cooking.
How about me?
No, no. When you are fully ripe, my dear, those little flecks of brown appear. You're most digestible, my friend, delicious too from end to end. You can put them in a pie, any way you want to eat them. It's impossible to beat them, but bananas like the climate of the very, very tropical equator. So you should never put bananas in the refrigerator. Bananas are a solid food that doctors now include in baby's diet. And since they are so good for baby, I think we all should try it. See?
I think you guys get the picture in terms of how images were presented in the U.S. at the very beginnings of advertising for the multicultural audience. Something started to change at the turn of the 1960s, around or about 1969, the year of Woodstock, Jimi Hendrix, and the election of Adam Clayton Powell to Congress. This ad appeared. This is the beginning of integration in advertising in the U.S. Look at these guys sitting together on the bench, touching knees, having a laugh. It's an ordinary day, sure, but for that moment in 1969, it was revolutionary. Of course, race is visible, but how would we know if one of these guys was gay? I'd like to start off the topic with a timepiece from American history. The Jack's beer spot that you saw was originally developed in the 1950s by a brewery in New Orleans and later relocated to Jacksonville, Florida. I'd like to start off with this video because it's historical significance because of the topic that's relevant today. Many brands in the 1950s were trying to establish their brands within a growing and relevant community. Unlike today, there were no advertising tracking studies, Google Analytics to understand search terms, and Nielsen data to prove or disprove the relevance of whether or not advertising worked to build a brand and drove sales. However, like today, there is a growing segment of consumers. They are underrepresented, and brands should want a piece of the action. In 1949, David Ogilvy, our founder, was just starting to put pen to paper and craft one of the most historic agencies in the history of advertising. One of David Ogilvy's principles is that the function of advertising is to sell, that successful advertising for any product is based on information about our consumer. As we look back in time, you can obviously see the advancements that we've made, but today I'm going to talk about three things: a new approach to marketing communications, our approach to what we've termed in the U.S. Called the new general market, and how we use our approach to evaluate and develop good creative work. Times were a lot different back then, and as we look back, we wonder, why was advertising so white? It was called the Mad Men era. There was a lack of diversity in communication channels were very simplistic, with a focus on print, radio, and later TV. Some would even argue that the industry is still not diverse enough. I will not pretend Ogilvy is there yet. We've made improvements over the last few years in the area. In so many ways, our industry and the way our clients procure service is similar to the model of the 1950s and 60s. There is this notion of a general market that exists today and a multicultural market. Very similar to what was presented earlier around cross-cultural, that's the discipline. You saw, I think there were 6 or 8 different segments. Well, in the US, the term that we're now starting to use is called total market as a third industry vertical. The discipline that we use is cross-cultural. The reason for that is that there's just been too much of a significant gain in terms of multiculturals becoming the majority in 9 out of our top 10 cities. In 2010, I had a similar conference to what you guys are doing today, and it was one of the industry's first cross-cultural conference. I'd like to share a piece of video from that conference that sums up where America is today.
I've been studying demography for quite a few decades, and what I have noticed is that the pace of change in terms of diversity is accelerating. We see dramatic differences in growth rates between adults and children. You can see that white, non-Hispanic children are actually declining. But among Hispanics, Asians, and multiracial, there is very, very high growth. Only about a quarter of all U.S. growth of adults in the past decade were white non-Hispanics, and virtually all growth among children in this decade will be either Hispanic, Asian, or multiracial. And 3/4 of all Hispanics in America live in just 7 states. In the South and in the West, Asian population is about equally concentrated in a number of large metropolitan areas. Growth, however, is where it's at, and growth is clearly a picture of diversity.
Peter adequately stated that if you do not target what's called the minority community in the U.S., Hispanics and African Americans, Asians, or what we like to say the new general market, in a relevant way, your brand will not grow. And that's pretty much the theme of inclusion. Inclusion is just not a nice thing to do, but it truly is about growth from the business standpoint. The 2010 census shows that more than 50% of all African Americans in the U.S. reside in 11 states. This is relevant for advertising and shopper and customer marketing because folks are walking right into retail establishments where their brand communications may not reflect the audience. In 2009, $117 billion in media was spent, and only 7% was targeted, of those dollars was targeted towards Spanish language and black media. 2009 versus 2008, the numbers were down more than 7%. What do these changes mean to brands and to advertising was the question. In order for advertising to be more meaningful, we have to change the model. We argue that from the 1950s and 1960s, this was the standard advertising model focusing on general market and blacks. In the 1990s, brands started shifting budgets and it became either U.S. Hispanic or African Americans, and in some cases, African American culture became the culture of the general market. Something happened in 2012 and somebody said, we get it now. The notion of general market was evident during the 2012 presidential elections. Who elected the U.S. president? 71% of all U.S. Hispanics voted for him, 93% of blacks, Asians, 73%, 76% LGBT, and 55% of all women voters. And that was the tipping point of brands truly understanding the power of the new majority. As I mentioned before, in the 1950s, this was the model for advertising. It was primarily either general market or African American. In the 1990s, as the Hispanic population grew, it became an either or. The African American transitioned into general market advertising, and then that was Hispanic because of the language difference. What we simply argue for, the cross-cultural model as it was similarly presented today, the way that it works is that we try to understand the business and cultural insight. We get to a communications platform purely based on how we understand all segments, not just general market or Hispanic. You need to have African American, Asians, general market, Hispanic, as well as LGBT, depending on the product, obviously women. But this is something that we approach to drive brand value and consumer behavior. After assessing each of those different segments, we try to understand what are those similarities as well as those nuances as differences. And we land on a cross-cultural strategy based upon the work that we do from a bottoms up. What I'd like to do now is walk you through two case studies. One case study we're going to start with is Ford Motor Company. What I'd like to share with you is first play two different versions of communications for the same product. After that, we'll have a little discussion in terms of what you pulled out of it.
And we lift our glasses as they explore their new path. Explore the...
Second pass, I'm gonna let you finish. I just want to celebrate a union of crazy technology and crazy cool. The all-new 2011 Ford Explorer. 100% redesigned. I love it.
He's not my side of the family.
Are these our gifts? Take them out. There's room for 7.
How did you get in here?
Available terrain management, baby. Boom! Yeah, there it is. Going to the wedding. I love it! You can go anywhere. Choose the road surface and the Explorer adjusts to the conditions. Sand, mud, can't stop me. Woo! Up the hill I went. What hill? I didn't see it. Crazy! I love my Explorer. I don't even feel the bumps. Yeah, baby. People are you feeling me? This thing is crazy. Terrain management, baby. The all-new 2011 Ford Explorer. It's crazy. Hey, that's my ride. Hey, that's not yours.
Now I'm going to show you a second commercial, but targeted primarily at the general market.
If ever there's a reason to be swept up in the season of the falling days, when it comes down to me, and I grit my teeth.
Was the first one or second one better? First one, right? So you guys see what happens now when you have two separate efforts targeting the general market and multicultural. One could say Ford lost out on an opportunity because they were highly fragmented in terms of their approach. Did they truly understand the cultural insights of both segments? Had they really taken that effort in play, it would have been about reinvention and humor and unique features versus lifestyle, two different lifestyles, trying to highly focus on two different segments. Now, the results of the campaign, I would argue that that should have been the general market spot, but it was not. It was only focused on the African American segment. The second one I'm going to show you is from Frito-Lay. With this particular case, with Frito-Lay, I'm not going to give away what the actual case results were, but this second case study is a submission from Frito-Lay sponsored called Crash the Super Bowl. I'm using this as an example to demonstrate how a campaign is executed in a similar way using the insight of family as well as the element of surprise. I will share the element of surprise at the end of this, the end of the second one.
Hi. Aw, thank you. Have a seat. Kyle, Jalen. Jalen, Kyle.
Jalen, you play nice.
I'll be right back.
What's going on, little man? I see you got your game skills down, Pack. You might have your hands full once I'll pick up the controller, little man.
Put it back. Keep your hands on my mama. Keep your hands on my Doritos.
Jalen, are you playing nice?
I'll play the second one.
Who has the Doritos? Who has the Doritos? You want one? Sorry. Too bad you're down there and I'm up here. Smells so good.
Both of them are actually really good. With the case of Frito-Lay, in terms of Crash the Super Bowl, even though it was a commercial that had black talent, the director who won or was voted number 11 was of Puerto Rican descent. So he was able to tap into an insight based on environment, based on insight that he had witnessed that just so happens to be of black culture or black ethnicity. It didn't mean that because he was Hispanic, he had to produce a Hispanic spot. So it really proves that you can't be exclusive with the approach you take to advertising. The more inclusive you are, the better results you're likely to get from an outcome perspective. The director that created the second spot did a good job as well, because the second spot showed the use of humor, multi-generation, family, and it really encapsulated in terms of what Americans as a whole are having to manage through with the case of the changing American family. So I say that to say, and humor in moments where that was that cross-cultural line there, and it was a shared insight specific to general market African American and Hispanics. You see, throughout our history, culture has been driven by the gradual inclusion of the fringes. And we can't look in the same places anymore for growth. As Peter stated earlier, 80% of all growth in the US over the next 5 years will come from the multicultural audience. We need to seek out progress from different places. We're seeing birth of the cross-cultural society. Racial and identity prejudices, boundaries will always be there. But we in Adland are starting to speak to everyone, not only recognizing, but as important, celebrating those differences. What I'll do now is play a most recent Cheerio spot that really is a sign of where America is moving forward from a communications perspective.
Mom,
Yes, honey?
Dad told me that Cheerios is good for your heart. Is that true?
Says here that Cheerios has whole grain oats that can help remove some cholesterol, and that's heart healthy.
As recently as last year, this ad created a firestorm over social media because you had a interracial casting with a black father, white mother, and a biracial kid. Full marks for the clients and the agency for the bravery, but clearly there are still people who live in the past in the U.S. We are soon to be a nation where the majority of us belong to minority groups. The Census Bureau says that this will happen around 2042. In summary, does including Hispanics, blacks, Asian, women, disabled, LGBT, cultural insights and nuances in advertising increase the value of brands? Number one, absolutely. If you want your brand to grow and be relevant for the new general market, you have to be inclusive with your practices. Brands and agencies need to reframe their brand building and service model. The cross-cultural model, when executed right, provides a total market communications platform and allows the brand to execute against each segment in a much more effective and efficient manner. If we want to hang together instead of splitting apart, we need to learn how to speak to everyone with respect, inclusion, and honesty. We need to celebrate the differences. This last commercial I'm going to play for you aired in February of 2014 during the Super Bowl. I'll share it with you, have a look at it, and you'll see where we come from as a nation. Sorry. Not sure what happened here, but my apologies.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies.
Por tus olas de granos ámbar.
Your piscina sakuti.
Sa ibabaw ng mga prutas.
America, America, God shed His grace on thee. Orba hijre ke saath taj tera cha. Tu la mer priya.
Berat tu verrière tirotard.
From sea to shining sea.
Look how far we've come in the U.S., and now is your time to reframe your marketplace. I love this, not because that it was done by us. It is because this is how we all should be celebrating together. So I say to you, in conclusion, if you have your iPhone, your Samsung, as you go through your walk every day, let me know how you're doing by the hashtag reframe. Please stay in touch. Thank you very much to the Congress, and I really appreciate your patience. Thank you. Q&A?